I had been a corporate lawyer for many years. I'm somebody who is a product of an achievement-oriented household, and was raised in a home in which education was very important and upward mobility was the priority. And my parents were great. Like, all my needs were met. Like, I don't come from a broken home or anything like that. It was just sort of expected. Like, this is the ladder you're going to climb, right? And I got into all the nice schools and went to law school, and I very dutifully followed that blueprint on the implied promise, I suppose, even if on an unconscious level, that this would be the path towards not only respectability and financial stability, but also, of course, happiness. I had fits and starts because, despite the fact that I graduated from Stanford and Cornell Law, I was harboring this progressive relationship with alcoholism that on some level was a percolating existential crisis. Like, it was sort of something inside me telling me that my discomfort had to be medicated, and that discomfort could be tracked back to being on the wrong track or never cultivating enough introspection to ask myself, like, well, what is it that you want to do? Like, you're running this program for life that was embedded upon you, but you've never stopped for a moment to think, maybe there's another path for you, or what is it about, what is it that speaks to you? What are you curious about? How would you like to show up in the world and express yourself? All of those things were kind of repressed and muted as I, ascended each rung of this ladder. And that ultimately, met its match when alcoholism got the upper hand and I got sober. But then I spent the next 10 years building this foundation of sobriety, but also very much intent on rebuilding all of the goodwill and respectability that I'd squandered as a result of my drinking and using. And my goal was really to just become that person that I was at 18 when I had so much promise and the world was truly my oyster. So again, even being introduced to spiritual tools and meditation and a better program for living that the 12 steps gifted me and continue to gift me, I was still missing the bigger picture of spiritual and personal growth. And so I had another crisis on the cusp of turning 40 when this existential crisis of being this lawyer kind of caught up to a health scare, because for that 10-year period, I wasn't really taking care of my physical body. I'd gained a bunch of weight and was pretty depressed about this career choice that I'd made, but felt very trapped and couldn't find a way out. And so that moment, which culminated in a staircase episode where, I couldn't walk up a full flight of stairs without having to pause, winded, out of breath, and the like, was this moment of clarity, not unlike the day that I decided to finally get sober, where I realized I was blessed with a certain willingness. There was like this portal that opened, and it felt very similar to that previous day 10 years earlier. And I knew I needed to take action on that. And that was the impetus and the beginning of a new journey in which I was trying to understand who I was. My vehicle for doing that was ultra endurance sports. It was never a goal to become a competitive ultra endurance athlete in my mid 40s. And the success that I've experienced in that world aside, what gets missed, I think, often when people ask me about it, is the fact that it was much more of a spiritual journey than it was an athletic journey. Like, all that time alone with my breath and my heartbeat, in a solitary state out in nature, was almost a survival mechanism of me trying to figure out who I was. And I needed that capaciousness, like all of that time alone in nature by myself in that, kind of active state of low-grade exertion to kind of create that connection. And it took a long time. But during that period of time when I was training a lot and, like 25 hours a week and doing these races, I did need something to keep me company. And that's when I discovered podcasts long before most people. Like, I was listening to podcasts in 2006, 2007, 2008, before you could just click an app on your iPhone. Like you had to go to your desktop, open iTunes, find the podcast there, download them, create like a playlist, and then bounce that to an iPod. Like you had to do work. Like if you wanted to listen to a podcast, it wasn't a seamless, affair by any stretch of the imagination. And it was early days, so it wasn't like it is today, but there was still some good stuff. And I was starting to learn all these things, and people were telling stories about how they created their careers and, how they think about themselves and the world. And I just it was like a whole world opened up to me, but I didn't know anybody else who listened to I would say, oh my God, you got to listen to this. And nobody was interested, So the point being that by the time 2012 rolled around and I had a book that had come out and I kind of did all the promotional stuff to push it out into the world and was contemplating, well, what am I going to do now? That's when the impetus to start a podcast started. Like I had been a consumer of this format for many, many years, listened to thousands and thousands of hours. And I noticed that nobody was really doing anything all that compelling in the health, well-being, or fitness categories. And so I just thought, I know some interesting people. I have some experience. I have a sense of how this medium works based upon how much I had consumed. And our family at the time, we were living on the North Shore of Kauai in yurts on a organic farm. That's a whole other story.
I was just there like 6 days ago.
Oh, you were? So do you know Common Ground in Kilauea?
I don't know.
We could talk about that more maybe off mic later, but the owner of that property had read my book and he was trying to figure out what to do with this incredible piece of property that he had. And for some reason he thought like I could be of assistance. And I was broke, I needed like somebody to hire me to do anything at this point. Like I was waiting for the phone to ring. And this was like a lifeline, and even though it seemed weird, like why would we go to this place? Our whole family picked up. We moved. We weren't able to pay our mortgage at the time. We thought we were going to lose our house. And we thought, well, maybe we're just going to live in Kauai now. And we'd been there a number of months and I was trying to help this guy out. God bless him. And at the same time, starting to feel a little island fever. Like I had written this book and I was trying to get things going on. And here I was in this island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And I felt very detached and I just needed to do something creative. And that's where the idea of starting a podcast kind of cropped up. And I remember very specifically going online and trying to figure out like, well, what equipment do I need and how do you actually do this? And there was a guy called Pat Flynn. You know who Pat Flynn is? Yeah. Smart Passive Income. And he had made like a series of videos, like 5 or 6 videos where each one took you through every single thing that you needed to do. Here's the equipment you need. And here's the high-end version of it and the low-end version. Here's how you get your MP3 onto iTunes, and here's what you need. Here are the things you need to fill out. Like he literally it was like an instruction booklet, and I just followed that exactly. And then I got my wife to sit down with me, and we recorded a podcast. And it wasn't like today where we're launching a podcast. It was very humble. Like we just thought, well, that was fun. We had a great conversation. Do you want to do it again tomorrow? And that's really how it started. And ever since, like, I think it was November of 2012, like we've never missed a week, and it's just built slowly over time. But the thing that was different then was that because it was so early, there was no competition. Like people were not clamoring to start podcasts. At the time, if you told somebody you had a podcast, they looked at you sideways and a little bit weird, because podcasting for the most part, unless you were a comedian or you were doing politics or sports or something like that, was considered this weird kind of hobbyist pursuit that people who like to hang out at Radio Shack might be interested in. And so as a result, even though I think those early episodes might have only done, 1,000 downloads or something like that, we went right to number 1 in the health category because there was nobody else doing anything. So if you opened up iTunes and went to podcasts, you would see our show there. And that was enough kind of external validation, like an affirmation, like, oh, like there's something here. It's going to be a long road towards this being anything other than what it is right now. But it gave me the energy to continue to pursue it. But I never thought it would be a vocation or something that would pay the bills. Like I did it for probably 5 or 6 years before it generated any kind of revenue. I did it just for the passion of doing it. And I love doing it. I still love doing it.